Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Stamperia Blue Dream mini album tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. If you are new to the tutorial series, we've already designed our album and our base pages, and now we're in the process of decorating our pages. So if you want to join us, all the papers for the Blue Dream collection are available on the Scrap and Create website. They're linked in the description box below. So let's get started on page number 2. This is the main paper that I want to use for page number 2. I've designed my page so that this part is going to fit on my upper flap. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this first right along this line where the wood piece meets the striped piece. And now when I set this on here, it's a little bit too big still. It doesn't have enough of a border on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to take this side of my paper and I'm going to trim off just a little tiny bit. And this isn't even going to be 1/8 of an inch, so it might be about 1/16 of an inch, just a little bit. So now I'll have that nice border around my piece. I'm going to go ahead and ink my edges, and then I'm going to come back and we'll place a couple of pieces on before we glue this down. I cut 2 lengths of twine to 10 inches each, and I'm going to use these for my closure mechanism for my flaps. So I've marked in the center of my smaller flap and my larger flap, and I'm going to place these pieces down. So one of them is going to hang off the bottom of the page, and then the other one is going to hang off the bottom of the flap. And I'm just adhering about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of my twine up onto that page. It'll be covered by my paper, so it won't be a big deal. This piece is going to go here, but we also have this piece that we made, and it's going to go here on top of it. Now, when we were building the page, I'd mentioned that I was going to make a swing tab out of one of my chipboard pieces, and I was going to have it be a closure. So you have to decide if you want your closure to be here, or if you prefer it to be here in the center. It really is up to you which look you prefer. I'm going to place mine down here. So I'm placing my flap on the edge of the paper so that there's about 1/8 of an inch border on the left and the top side. And then I'm going to take my piercing tool. I have my starfish piece on the page. I have to decide which way I like it best. I want it to catch this corner, so I like it here. So then I'm just going to pierce my hole down here towards the bottom. I'm going to remove this, and then I'm going to lift this up without moving anything so that I can pierce through my chipboard piece and through my paper. Then I'm going to take my brad and insert it down through both of those pieces and open my prongs on the back side. So now when this swivels, when it's like this, it'll allow this tab to open. But any other way that this is, as long as it's not on one of those positions, it will keep this flap closed. So I'm going to take that piece off for now, and I'm going to adhere this down here. Now that I have my paper on, I'm going to bring my flap back in. I'm going to place it on my page, double checking to make sure it's where I want it to be, checking that when I swing this, it will open, and make some adjustments. I'm just adjusting to make sure that it absolutely has enough room to clear that. Now that I have it in place, I'm going to just place a little mark here and here so that I know where to line that up. Then I'm going to take my adhesive and just apply it on the back of this flap here. And then we're going to adhere this flap right on top of the decorative paper. So relining it up with the marks I made makes it quick and easy. And press this down. Next, I have a photo mat cut to 4 inches by 6 inches, and I'm going to place this over here to cover that small tab piece that we use to adhere this to the page, but it's going to be just slightly past that because I don't want it to be right up against that edge. Now, when I place this piece on, I'm going to close my flap to make sure it is completely hidden, that it is straight on my page. If I could see it at all, I would adjust this because I want this to be a hidden photo spot. Now I'm going to add my palm tree ephemera piece. I'm going to put the trunk of my tree right next to this bottom edge. Some of the leaves are going to be slightly on the photo mat, but I'm going to line this up to where it doesn't go past where the edge of my page is. So I'm going to place this here. That's the edge. I don't want to go past this with my tree, so I can take my tree out just a little bit more and double check and make sure. So right here, which means only about this much of my tree I need to leave the backing on, so I'm going to remove the rest and place this down on my page, and then my photo will slide right underneath. So I've left the backing on here. It's going to be on my photo mat, and now I'm going to add my tree very carefully, making sure that it's all underneath that flap, and then pressing this down. Next, I'll close my flap, secure with my swing tab, and we're going to move on to this bottom part. We have this piece that we cut off of the paper. It's going to go here on this bottom part of this flap to cover that end of that tie, but we're going to tuck another piece under it first before we put this on. So I've taken one of the pieces of the darker blue cardstock, cut it to 3/4 by 8 inches. This is going to go up here at the top of my flap, and then I'm going to place this one down here at the bottom with just a slight overlap in the paper. So now both of my pieces are on. When this flap is closed, you still see that continuous piece of paper, only broken up by this little tiny cream border. Before we go any further, I'm going to tie some charms on the end of my strings. So I've got the palm tree and I've got the shell. Doesn't matter which one you tie where. So I'm just going to loop this on the end and tie a knot in this so that it stays at the end of my string and doesn't go anywhere when it's tied closed. Once both of my charms are on, I'm just going to cut these ends just to make them a little bit smaller. And now I've got my pieces that when we're finished, they'll be tied here in a bow. And these charms will hang down. Now you can always trim this if you want this to be shorter dangles, or if you like it long, that's okay too. Just remember it's going to hang out of the bottom of the album because of the way it's designed. For now though, we need to open this back up and we're going to begin decorating on the inside. From this 12 by 12 sheet, you're going to need a piece that measures 8 inches by 6 1/4 inches. Now this is going to go here, and I'm going to be placing this just below that score line, and is going to tuck down into this flap, which we're going to turn into a pocket. Now that I have my paper on, I'm going to add my adhesive on both sides of my lower flap. Close this up, burnish this, and make sure that it's nice and flat so that it's a tight pocket that doesn't pucker in the middle. For the top of the flap, I have a piece of my solid colored cardstock. This is a 1/2 inch by 8 inches. I'm going to place this at the very top of my flap with that small uniform border around it. I have another piece of that cardstock that measures 1 1/4 by 8 inches, and I'm going to adhere this one down here to the bottom, just above that score line in the cardstock. For the center of my page, I have 2 white photo mats. Both of them measure 4 inches by 5 inches. They should fit right between these 2 strips of the blue paper with a very small cream border between them. And they will be side by side here. And now that I have these on, I'm going to place my boat down here as my embellishment. But I'm first going to have to cut this oar. I'm going to just place the oar down below, but I don't want it to go through my actual crease in my page. So I'm just going to draw a line right above where that score line is. And then I'm going to very carefully cut this, making sure not to lose this piece. And now when I place this down, I also want to make sure that I don't cut off the backing above these places here so that the photo will slide behind it. So I'm just going to peel up my backing very carefully from the bottom part. And then I'm going to cut this. And now I have my piece where I can realign that oar, making sure that nothing else is sticking below that line. So being very careful that the front of the boat is also in the correct position. Placing this down. And now I'm going to take my oar piece that I cut off and remove that backing. Then I'll just line it up right below the score line and press that down. This is cut out from the frame on page 3. This was the center part, so it measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. I'm going to put this to good use and make this be a photo mat for my pocket. So I first have my 2 white mats. They measure 4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. One is going to go at the bottom on each side of my mat. Then from this 12 by 12 paper, I cut the strip across the bottom. I just cut it right along that edge where the stripes met this piece. And then I cut this to 5 1/2 inches. So one is going to go on the top on each of the sides. And then I'm going to place my photo mat in my pocket. My photo mat is complete, so I'm going to place it in my pocket, close my flap, and then tie my little twine pieces closed. Now I did go ahead and trim my twine pieces down, so I went ahead and cut the ends off, reapplied my charm so that they don't hang down quite as long. But if you like that look, it's okay to leave yours too. So they will still hang out of my album just slightly, but it won't hang out quite as far as it was before. So I have a smaller little bow, and if I actually tie it up a little bit more, the charms will stay inside of my page and inside of my album. So we're now finished with the front side of page 2. We can go ahead and flip over and start on the back side. For the back of the page, this is the paper that I'm going to be using. And if you remember when we designed this, this side is designed to cut off right past the cat's head. So we don't want to cut it off. That's how we're going to be cutting this paper. So I'm going to bring my paper trimmer in, and I'm going to line up the end of my cut with the edge of the cat's ear. On mine, this is about 3 3/8 of an inch, just slightly less than that. And I'm going to cut this here. Now I am going to end up having to trim off of this side just a little bit, but I want to put this pretty close to the edge because remember, the other piece is going to be here. And there's going to be a border all the way around it. So I'm only going to cut a little tiny sliver off of this side. It's about 1/16 of an inch. And then I'll come in here and I'll check to see how this looks. And I think I'm going to cut just a little bit more off because I want a little bit more of a border on that right-hand side of the page. So now this piece in my hand, it's a little tiny bit over 4.5 inches. And it looks good to me. So I'm going to place this piece down here on the page, and then I'm going to place this piece down here on the page. Then we'll add our belly band and we'll start on our closure. Now that my paper is on, I'm going to take my belly band and I'm going to place this here in the center of this piece. Now I also want to remember that this is going to be the closure. It's going to go here. This is going to close here with a magnet, but I don't want this tag to keep sliding down. So I'm actually going to adhere my belly band to the top, and then from here down, I'm also going to add adhesive to the whole piece. So that's about 2 3/4 of an inch from the bottom all the way down. I have my adhesive and just a little bit at the top. So now I'm going to just take this, place this in the center, and adhere this down. Next, I'm going to take a magnet and I'm going to adhere this right in the center of my little tiny square closure piece. I'm going to take one of my small cut apart cards and I'm going to apply it right over top of that magnet to cover it. Once my first magnet is placed, I can place my second magnet and apply my adhesive. If you're using the basic gray magnets, just go ahead and peel that backing off. Close this, to mark where your magnet needs to go or to place your magnet. And then we're going to cover this with a piece of paper. From this sheet, it's the 12 by 12 with the clock on it. I've cut a lot of this down so you can hardly recognize it. I cut this strip off here and it is about 1 inch wide and it's an 8-inch long piece. I'm going to apply this right to the front of my belly band to cover that magnet. Then I've cut a piece of my lighter blue paper to a 1/2 inch by 1 inch, and I'm going to place this right here to cover that little space between my page and my closure mechanism. Once I have those on, I'm going to come out here to the front side. I'm going to add my little card to the front of my closure, and I have another one of those little blue pieces that's a 1/2 inch by 1 inch. This one I actually need to trim just a little tiny bit, so it's less than a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Yep, that looks a little bit better. So I'm going to place this right next to my piece where there's a nice little border. Now I have my closure mechanism on and I've got my tag ready. Remember, if you don't have the metal die, just cut yourself a rectangle out of the paper, use the corner rounder, and place your paper here. So I have my cut apart card on the front, nothing on the back, so that a photo or journaling can go there. This goes in the pocket here to keep that flap closed. But we're going to remove this for now and set it aside, and we're going to come in here and add some photos in here, and then we're going to come inside of here and add a couple there too. Starting on this side here, I have a piece of the lighter colored solid blue paper that's a 1/2 inch by 8 inches, and I'm going to place this right on the right edge of the flap. Then I have 2 photo mats that are cut to 4 inches by 4 inches, and I'm going to place these here and here, right next to that score line, and there will be a small space between them at the top and the bottom, and a very small space between it and the piece of blue paper. Then for here, I have another 1/2 inch by 8 inch piece of that blue cardstock. It's going to go here right up against the edge of this piece. Then I have one 4 by 6 photo mat that's going to go here in the center. Then I have 2 strips that are 1 inch by 4 inches, and they are cut. There was a strip here across the top of this. This is the 12 by 12, the back of the front cover page. I'm going to add 1 piece down here below and 1 piece up here to the top of my page. And I'm going to place these down the same way that I placed them on the page here and went through them with you. Now that I have my pieces on the page, I've got my little ephemera pieces I'm going to place on here too. So I've got the little cat. I'm going to just leave a little tiny piece here so that the corner of the photo will slide up underneath of that cat. And I'm just going to very carefully place the cat on the page so that the tail isn't sticking out the bottom and the head doesn't go past this fold in the page. And then with the flower, I need to leave this portion of it and take just the one side off so that both of the photos will slide up underneath. So now my spread is finished. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and then I'm going to open this side, and we're going to begin adding things here. I'm going to start with this side here. First, I have a photo mat that measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. It's going to go here in the center. This is a strip that I cut from, I believe it was the clock paper, and there's 2 of them. They measure 3 1/4 by 1 7/8. One is going to go here at the bottom. The other one is going to go here at the top. I just cut into the brown and cut 1/8 of an inch off of that strip, so I have mostly that pretty color of blue and the yellow. Coming over here, I have 2 photo mats that are 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. I have one piece of the dark blue cardstock that's 3/8 of an inch by 3 1/4. It's going to go in here between these two. Then I have 2 pieces that measure 1/2 inch by 3 1/4, and one's going to go here at the top. One's going to go here at the bottom. Then I have from the 8 by 8 this little cut apart that I'm going to place here in the center, only adhering down the part that's going to touch the cardstock, so the photos will slide up underneath of it. So I'm going to adhere all of this down, and then we'll be finished with this page. Now that everything is in, we're going to close this, take our tag, add it here, and the page is finished. So now I'm going to flip this over to the front side, bringing my album in. I'm going to flip page 1 over, and page 2 is going to go on this first hinge on this side. So just like previously for number 1, I'm going to add my adhesive to the top of my hinge section, not going past that score line. Going to open up my page and adhere this down right next to my score line, but making sure that I don't go over that score line at all. And then I also want to line up the top and the bottom, and it will also line up with page 1 as well. I'm going to press this down so that it adheres to my hinge. And now I'm going to add my adhesive to the back side of my hinge. Again, making sure not to go past that score line with my adhesive. I also need to go down the bottom of the page to seal that bottom of that pocket shut. And then I'm going to fold my page closed, sealing up the bottom and attaching it to the hinge. Once my page is in, I'm going to flip that one and flip this one. So you'll see how they start to stack on top of each other with the album closed, or with the album open. So that's it for the build for page 2. In the next video, we will begin building page 3 and page 6. Those are the 2 envelope pages, so we're going to do them both at the same time. They should be pretty simple and they won't take very long. If you are just joining me for the tutorial series, don't forget to check the description box below. Head over to the Scrap and Create website to pick up all of the Blue Dream papers so you can join us in making this album.